What did I do?
So are we ready to go, Mr. Sanders and Ms. Marshall? Okay. So let us call us back to order, and the first thing we need to do is to certify that we have done nothing improper while we're in closed session.
Okay, certification of closed meeting. I move that this council certify by a recorded vote that to the best of each council member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Ms. Thomas, take the vote, please.
Councillor Payne?
Yes.
Councillor Pinkston?
Yes.
Councillor Puryear?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Next on our agenda is a moment of silence. We will begin our 6:30 p.m. business meeting with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Councilors, any announcements?
Not this.
I'm not sure whether this was going to get announced. Is anybody going to talk about the federal grant that Lauren Hildebrand and I went down to Richmond about?
You can.
Okay. So an announcement, some people, if they're watching the local news, may have seen a story because Henry Graff was there covering the story and was going to send it up to WVIR. But the Department of Transportation and the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration has given to Charlottesville a $7.1 million grant, which is for the purpose of completing the infrastructure repairs and modernization of the gas system. This is basically, it is not intended to increase the reach of the gas system. It is intended to replace old lines and pipes and so on with new and more modern pipes, number one, so that it's safer, and number two, so that it's not leaking methane out into the rest of the world. And Director of our City Utilities, Lauren Hildebrand, and I went down to Richmond today, and there's, I guess, a picture of us holding the $7.1 million check that's about yay big. So anyway, that's my only announcement of things going on.
So the grant was from whom and for what?
It was from Federal Department of Transportation and the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. And I had not known until this that pipelines were covered by the Department of Transportation, but they are.
And that goes directly to our utilities department?
To do the repairs being discussed, yeah.
Fantastic.
Richmond got $10 million. We got $7.1 million.
Just a quick announcement that starting this week, the Tom Tom Festival, and it's a lot of activities for in every interest that it's been advertised in a lot of different places. I encourage the public to partake as you will.
Yeah. Other announcements, anyone? Okay, then any recognitions or proclamations? I don't remember any. So, hearing none, time for the consent agenda. Ms. Thomas?
Consent agenda. Number 2, minutes, March 29th, joint work session with the Planning Commission. March 30th, budget work session. April 6th, budget work session. April 11th, special meeting. 3, ordinance, consideration of a zoning text amendment. Planned unit developments, development size for urban corridor mixed use district, URB, second reading. Resolution number 4, appropriating funding for the Runaway Emergency Shelter Program grant, $209,444, second reading. 5, resolution appropriating funding from the Batten Family Fund Grant Award, $40,000, second reading. 6, ordinance adopting a new fee schedule for building permits and related fees, second reading. 7, resolution supplemental appropriation of federal transit operating and state and federal capital grants, $7,886,856, second reading. 8, resolution, the 2023 City Climate Protection Program, program support grant with LEAP, $78,833, one of two readings. 9, resolution, ratifying resolution number R23-042, approved on April 3rd, 2023, to reflect funding appropriated from the Land and Water Conservation Fund for Moores Creek Parkland acquisition, as the resolution included in the meeting materials was a duplicate of the Virginia Land Conservation Fund resolution. The accounting remains the same.
Thank you. So we will now take public comment regarding items on that, those 8 items just read by the clerk, the consent agenda. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. If you're on the Zoom webinar, you may select the raised hand option to be placed in the speaker queue. If you're joined by phone, *9. If you're in person, happy to hear from you now. Those of you who had told us you wanted to come talk about a specific topic, this is not your moment. That's in a few minutes. Okay. Anybody who wants to talk about those 8 items read by the clerk on the consent agenda? Anybody present? Nope. Okay. Anybody online wishing to address us on those items?
Mayor Snook, I see no raised hands.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments from council? Ms. Thomas?
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Councilor Puryear?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 to adopt the consent agenda. City manager report. Mr. Sanders, Ms. Marshall, I gather Mr. Rogers is under the weather, maybe
Yes.
joining us remotely, but
Yeah, he is under the weather, but he is online right now.
Okay.
We have a financial report from a budget director and treasurer. I believe those are the only 2 participants. And then I have a matter that I've been requested to provide to you from per the city manager. So we'll let Chrissy take it from here.
Good evening, Council. We're going to spend just a few minutes providing you with the quarterly financial report. My part is going to be quick, as we talked about this during the budget development work sessions. As you know, we talked about the fact that revenues are still performing well, and with our last real estate assessment that came in January, we are looking at roughly, we are anticipating about $10.4 million of a revenue surplus for the end of FY23. That accounts for about just under 5% of our original budget. Additionally, on the expenditure side, we are about 3/4 of the way through, as this report is coming to you as of March 31st, and other expenses are tracking pretty closely with the budget. However, from our conversations, we also know that we are having a significant amount of positions that remain unfilled as we work through our recruitment. So we do anticipate that there will be some vacancy savings. So at a minimum, we're looking at a $10.4 million revenue surplus, and we anticipate there will be additional savings on the expenditure side as well. I do want to remind you and the public that our Budget Explorer is updated as of the end of the third quarter. So for anyone who would like to go and look at any departmental budget, you can drill down to that level, down to the line item level if you'd like to take a look at that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Vandiver, our treasurer, for the treasurer's update.
Thanks, Chrissy. I think this part will go relatively quickly as well. Moving on to the next slide. This is a slide that just has an overview of some of the policy guidelines that we use when we're creating our investment strategy. And given some of the recent events that have occurred in the banking sector over the last few months, I wanted to just spend a minute on this slide talking about some additional requirements that public deposits have to follow. And they fall under the Security for Public Deposits Act, also known as SPDA. And so any public deposit that's put in a bank in the state of Virginia, there's certain requirements that bank has to meet. So they have to register with the state treasurer's office. there's certain auditing and reporting requirements that they have to meet in order to be classified as a public depository. And what that means is that, unlike some of the trouble that you saw with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and some of the other banks that have been in the headlines, when a public depository accepts a public deposit, they have to post collateral for those deposits. And they put it in an escrow account. In the case that there is some sort of bank failure or deficiency, the state treasurer's office would have those assets that they can make the public depositor whole. So when the city of Charlottesville is contracting for bank services, and we don't just use one, we have several banks in the area that we deposit with, we're making sure that they're registered as a public depository and that they're meeting all of those collateralization requirements so that we don't run into any trouble there. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly and explain when we get to the next slide and we're talking about cash deposits and money markets and that sort of thing, those are the public deposits that we're talking about that are have that extra layer of security just for us as a locality. So moving on to the next slide. So this is a slide that we've looked at a few quarters in a row, and it just kind of shows the changing asset allocation for the city's investment portfolio, including cash and money markets in blue, the sweep accounts, which is just another bank product, in orange. So the blue and orange are the ones that we were talking about a second ago that are covered by the Public Depository Act that require that additional level of security and collateralization by those accepting banks. And as you can see over the last year, especially moving funds into local government investment pools, as we've seen over the last year, a dramatic rise in interest rates and the yield on that product, where we're able to obtain that yield relatively easily with a high degree of safety. So we've shifted more of our deposits over the last year into those investment pools, and they also have overnight liquidity as well. So there's no concern about liquidity in those pools either. So moving on to the next slide. So the core portfolio that we utilize an investment manager to assist with, as you can see from December, which was last quarter, to this most recent quarter, there really has not been much change in the composition of the asset allocation in that portfolio. So almost 80% of the portfolio is invested either in U.S. Treasuries or agencies, so very secure, backed either explicitly or implicitly by the full faith and credit of the United States government, and then about 20% or so in other corporate notes and commercial paper, all from AAA issuers. And moving on to the last slide, you can see here about 60% of the portfolio has been invested out at this point, a little bit longer, over a year, nothing exceeding 4 years. Although the state code does allow us to go up to 5 years, we don't have anything out that long right now, but we are trying to take advantage of the higher rates while they're available in the 1 to 3 year range. And so you see the largest percentage of the portfolio is invested at this point into 2 to 3 year maturities. And then the last little chart on the right there just shows the difference between the orange line represents the overnight rate on liquid funds compared to the blue line, which is the yield on a 1 year treasury. So you can see over the last year that overnight rate has gone from about 40 basis points to almost 5%. And actually, this last month was sort of the first month where we've seen those lines have kind of crossed, which is kind of an indication that the market thinks that we may be headed towards the end of this increasing rate cycle. So we're trying to position the portfolio in light of that and lock in some of those yields as we can. And I think for the most part, that is all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Any questions for Treasurer Vanderburg? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, is that it for the...
No, one item. I do
Okay.
have one item for you. So I recently briefed the city manager on details pertaining to the issues that we've all been hearing about with the SPCA. And I was in the process of converting that briefing to a memo so that you all could get one of those trusty pieces that I prepare for you from time to time with the layers to an issue. So I'm basically providing that to council as well as the public just to make everyone aware of what the city has been doing at this time as it relates to this particular issue. So we've been involved in this matter. The city manager asked that I take the lead on this situation because it doesn't perfectly land in either one of our portfolios as deputies. So I immediately began having conversations with the county to take a look at what they've been up to make sure that we were aligning our process with theirs. In so doing, I've gone back and reviewed the 2009 tri-party agreement, which outlines pound services with the SPCA between the county and the city, making sure that we understand our responsibilities in that matter, and that if we were not upholding those, that we would immediately start to work on them. I reviewed a variety of accounts regarding animal and staff treatment at the facility. Looked at a number of comments and statements from a variety of places to make sure that we were aware of what was being discussed. I've reviewed the Office of Veterinary Services Notice of Violation and Opportunity for Good Faith Consideration, which was a notice that was provided to the city and the county on March 10th. That letter outlined a repeated non-critical violation of the Code of Virginia, which calls for immediate creation of a record upon establishing custody of an animal. This was the second violation that had occurred in that area within a 5-year window, which is the period of time that the state looks back to see if there is a repeat violation. We also received an inspection summary that was a more in-depth review of what was found at the time that they made a surprise visit to the facility. That summary was dated February 15th. I reviewed that in detail with the county, made sure that we were aware of what came out of that particular report, and it outlined an opportunity for us to provide a corrective action response, which was prepared, signed by the city manager and the county executive, and submitted back to the state March 31st. That particular item identified a series of recommendations that we provided back to the SPCA and ensuring that we felt it was necessary for them to do some additional things. That included identifying the implementation of a records policy and procedures to go along with that so that they would not have that repeat finding, of course. In addition, there will be some identified shelter orientation and signing changes, intake procedure changes, and training priorities for both staff and volunteers, and that the SPCA leadership would conduct monthly audits of record keeping because that was found to be a reason why they would have not necessarily been able to capture that violation from reoccurring. I wanted to also note that where the city can implement its own corrective action measures, we have identified a few, because as you know, I like to tell you everything. So our animal control officer position has been vacant for quite some time, so we have not really maintained the connection with the facility as we should have. We have tried to work through the fact that PD is short-staffed, so I did meet recently with the chief to identify some temporary staff coverage to make sure that we do have some interactions on a regular basis, similar to what the county is doing. The county has a more significant allocation of resources because there's quite a higher volume of activity for the entire county versus our 10 square miles. So in that moment, we've been able to make sure that we are situated in a way that we can respond to various issues going forward. We've made sure that we've involved HR in a matter of transitioning the ACO position to a sworn officer position, therefore making it more attractive. We hope that that will actually make it possible for us to fill that position as soon as possible, and it continues to promote the idea of alignment with the county. And then the last item in regards to where we are, we have recently been working to establish a site visit, a joint site visit between the city and the county where we plan to go to the facility, more or less expressing our desire to see change and make sure that the things that we provided in the corrective action have been implemented and that, of course, everyone is adhering to that. With the ED being placed on leave, we're not exactly sure if we can push forward to have that particular visit, but I intend to ask that the board chair host us for that walkthrough along with any staff that will be there to help us understand what's been done in the interim. And I'd also worked with the executive director to invite her to come before you on the 15th as a work session presentation, as we have not had an update from them since 2019. We'll discuss that with the board chair as well, and hopefully ensure that we can have that opportunity for you to engage directly with officials from the SPCA. So there's your memo. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that would be May 15th.
Yes, May 15th is the date we have booked at this time.
Thank you.
So, community matters, we have 4 pre-registered speakers, all of whom indicated a desire to talk about the SPCA, leaving 12 additional speaker slots for community matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We will now open the floor to pre-registered speakers. The first speaker is Sarah Lloyd. Is she here? Ms. Lloyd, you have 3 minutes.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say what I was going to say.
That's fine.
We appreciate
I realize he preempted you.
Right, exactly. So, hello, my name's Sarah Lloyd. I was born and raised in Albemarle County, and I've lived in the county for the last 10 years. I was a teacher at Walker Upper Elementary School for 6 years prior to becoming the volunteer manager at the Charlottesville-Albemarle SPCA, where I had also previously volunteered. I'm here as part of CASPA Concerns, a group formed in response to the issues at CASPA. Those issues include a toxic workplace led by CEO Executive Director Angie Gunter, resulting in alarming conditions for many of the animals and the inability to keep the shelter staffed with trained and experienced people. The CASPA Board of Directors hired McGuire Woods to conduct an independent investigation into the allegations, and as of last Friday, Angie Gunter is on paid administrative leave. CASPA receives almost $300,000 from the city of Charlottesville to serve as a pound for stray animals. The city council and taxpayers should be concerned that the 879 dogs brought into the pound at CASPA in 2022 possibly did not receive the care they deserved. Pet owners should be concerned if their pet went missing and ended up as a stray at CASPA. Would their family pet be forced into a tiny crate for over 23 hours per day due to lack of space until they are redeemed, or potentially exposed to a devastating illness due to lucrative out-of-state transports? Situations such as these, in my opinion, are a direct result of Angie Gunter's inability to properly lead the shelter and the board of directors supporting her. The CASPA Board of Directors has not extended any gesture to inspire faith in their purported plans or their ability and willingness to improve the shelter, so we remain skeptical about their path forward. The City Council should have a seat on the CASPA Board of Directors, which would ensure a voice for the taxpayers of Charlottesville. In addition, the investigation results from McGuire Woods should be released to the taxpayers who care about the future of the organization. Our concerns are the same as Mayor Snook, who said in his January interview with Courtney Stewart, quote, "I am concerned, again, first of all for the animals, but second for the humans, and third, that if we're putting $300,000 into an organization that's being poorly run, we want to fix that." The shelter needs the city of Charlottesville and community support to have all aspects of its operation scrutinized and significant changes made moving forward. In summary, we're asking you to take note of the abundant problems at CASPA and do three things. First, request the results of the investigation by McGuire Woods to be released to the public to establish transparency. Secondly, have a voice within the CASPA Board of Directors so that moving forward, the taxpayers of Charlottesville will know that the shelter is fulfilling its potential. And last, push for the much-needed changes to be made at the beloved CASPA. Our animals deserve better, the volunteers and employees deserve better, and the community deserves better. We hope you will help CASPA once again become the safe haven for homeless animals that it was always intended to be, as well as a positive, thriving workplace for people passionate about animal welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tracy Griggs. Ms. Griggs is also here. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Griggs, and I live in Gordonsville. And I know technically that makes me an outsider, not a direct beneficiary of your $7.1 million, but I have an idea of what you can do with your surplus. I have been a volunteer at the CASPCA for 10 years, and I stand with the CASPCA Concerns Advocates. No matter where you live, or whether you're a CASPCA employee, volunteer, donor, a potential or past pet adopter, a pet owner, that has or will likely at one point in time experience a lost pet, or even an elected official, we all have a dog in this fight to ensure that our shelter is restored to its rightful place as a leader in animal welfare. So tonight I'm here to ask the City Council to take direct role and request that 1, the board unleash the McGuire Woods report to the public, and 2, strongly encourage the board to leverage the power of the people and establish a community-based advisory group to help develop, implement, and evaluate a corrective action plan. As Sarah mentioned, the board received a completed report and immediately placed the CEO on administrative leave. This is welcome news, and I applaud the board for taking the steps in the right direction. But let us not forget, this is the same board that ignored allegations for some time, launched an investigation only after sustained public pressure, and responded to those who spoke truth to power with non-disclosure agreements and/or the threat of legal action. The CEO, while having significant influence and power over operations and cultural workplace, was likely enabled by a board and or organizational policies and practices that run counter to the shelter's mission. The board has a trust deficit with the community, and keeping them public informed about what they want, how they want, and when they want does not bode well for reestablishing that trust. The board needs to do more than just the bare minimum in transparency. It must involve the community throughout the entire reform and restore process. If they won't do this on their own, the City Council needs to nudge them in the right direction. If we as a community don't have the understanding of what went wrong, why, and what the proposed solutions are, how will we know if our shelter is making progress towards its goals? How will we know that the changes in the policies and procedures are having the desired impact? I believe that we are at a very critical juncture because the shelter can easily fall back to the comfort of familiar yet harmful practices, or it can take the courageous path forward to a better future. But that can't happen if we're left in the dark. Sharing the report with the public and creating a diverse and inclusive community advisory group are two vital actions to rebuild trust. But most importantly, relying on the experience and expertise of the community will ensure that the animals that come through the doors of the CASPCA will have the best chance at a happy and healthy tomorrow. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight, and also I think it's fitting because April is the Animal Cruelty Prevention Awareness Month, as noted by the Orange Ribbon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Griggs.
Thank you.
Next person who signed up is Juliet Lunka. Pardon me. Is she here? Or is she online?
Online.
Yes, Juliet, you are now joining council.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Juliet Lunka, Albemarle County. Over the last 17 years, I've lived in both Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville. I created the petition with now over 2,700 signatures calling for the removal of Angie Gunter as CASPA CEO and board member and the removal of Jen Corby as the president of CASPA's board. CASPA Concerns has detailed numerous serious concerns about the treatment of animals, employees, and volunteers at CASPA. As the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County fund CASPA with nearly $1 million in taxpayer money annually, the welfare of the animals and staff should be of concern. The shelter had $16 million in net assets at the end of 2021, and yet the CEO, Angie Gunter, chose not to invest that money into maintaining the living areas of the animals or hiring enough staff to adequately care for them. What is the taxpayers' money going toward? As reported by WINA and Seaville Weekly, Angie Gunter chose to overcrowd the shelter with numerous out-of-state transfers. Several dogs in at least one transfer had been exposed to highly contagious, potentially deadly diseases. This puts our local animals at risk. Last year, 879 local dogs were brought into the pound. I want to know that if my dog were to get loose and be picked up as a stray, that she would be placed in a clean shelter with safe equipment and would not be exposed, especially in an overcrowded environment, to such diseases. I believe all citizens in our area would expect this. Our community has been further put at risk by current practices that have seen dogs adopted or fostered out without proper behavioral assessment. Seaville Weekly reported that at the time of the In the Doghouse article, there were 3 dogs up for adoption that had killed other dogs, but this was not mentioned in their bios. It is crucial that a behavior expert be employed at CASPA and that CASPA be transparent about the histories of the dogs they are sending into the community. A behavior expert would also greatly improve the lives of the dogs at the shelter. Dogs with behavioral issues are currently placed on long adoption holds and forced to live in the shelter for months on end, as there is no one to properly evaluate and help them. With $16 million in net assets, the shelter should be able to hire a behavior expert. Again, how is taxpayer money being spent? In order for serious change to occur, City Council should require the following for CASPA to continue receiving funding. 1, CASPA board meetings should be made open to the public. And 2, City Council acquires and maintains a seat on the CASPA board so that there is an elected official representing the taxpayers. We have asked the same of the County Board of Supervisors. It was announced Friday that Angie Gunter was put on leave. This action is inadequate. City Council should demand to see a copy of the McGuire Woods report and the report be made public. The board's continual lack of action, along with its choice to target people who have spoken up, going so far as to threaten people with lawsuits through cease and desist notices, clearly illustrates why the need for reform remains urgent. How can the community have any trust in the shelter as it is currently run? We have been forced to speak here and to speak at the County Board of Supervisors because the CASPA board will not speak to us, and there is zero oversight over that board. Thoughtful, swift action from City Council and the County Board of Supervisors is one of our only hopes for change that will ensure a safe, thriving shelter for the animals, employees, and volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 4th, Tracy Missett. Am I pronouncing it?
Missette.
Missette.
May I use this lectern?
Absolutely.
My name is Tracy Missette. I'm a resident of Crozet, Virginia in Albemarle County, and I wanted to preface my comments, which I too will adhere to prior to the statement given about the efforts made to look into the situation at CASPA, and I wanted to articulate my gratitude for those efforts very, very sincerely. Just by way of background, my role at the shelter has been as a volunteer, not as an employee. I was originally a dog walker. I took dogs on Fido field trips. I was a lobby greeter. I started to transfer most of my energies to fostering cats, kittens, dogs, and puppies because of the situation at the shelter that people have described already, that had too many dogs, not enough people, in very unhealthy, very distressing circumstances. And I wanted to just, without going into everything that's already been said, I just wanted to stand in support of CISP-CA concerns and articulate my feelings of discouragement. As a former employment litigator, I'm very, very discouraged by the way that the board has handled the observations, experiences, and allegations about the difficulties in the shelter. They have treated people who are concerned about the workplace, about the animal space, with antagonism and hostility and a lack of transparency that I'm hoping through the support of the community will be reversed. I find it to be especially egregious to have this type of response from the board, particularly given the significant public support and public funding that the CASPA receives. I think that creates an incumbent responsibility for there to be a robust and fulsome investigation into the nature of the workplace and, most importantly, the nature of the shelter environment that the animals are currently living in. I, too, wanted to second, third, fourth, fifth, the hope that there could be a member of the City Council on the board to bridge the relationship, as was discussed a little bit earlier, just to provide a greater expectation that the dollars that are being spent by the city and the county are being used to support an environment that is decently treating employees and decently treating its animals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that is the end of our pre-registered speakers. Let's see if there's anybody online who would like to speak to us.
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have a couple of raised hands. Kathleen Glenn Matthews, you are on with council.
Good evening, and thank you for your service to the community. My name is Kathleen Glenn Matthews. I'm a resident of the city and Deputy Executive Director of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority. CRHA is an agency that has undergone considerable transformation and positive growth the past 3 years through strong management, allowing for strategic improvement through the agents and working on the agency's sustainability. I'm speaking tonight in support of the city's investment in CRHA's purchase of Dogwood Properties and the resulting preservation of affordable housing for our community. Decent, affordable housing is a core social determinant of an individual or family's personal health and well-being. Housing stability is essential for people to address their challenges and pursue their goals. Attainable housing also is important to the economic vitality of communities, ensuring opportunities for all individuals to improve their economic situation. Another long-term economic benefit of the affordable housing is the chance to decrease childhood poverty. Investing in CRHA's efforts to allow for us to bring service programs into communities that may not have previously had access. Some of our programs are housing stability. Our eviction prevention programs provide support so residents can work, raise families, age in place, attend school, and much more. Housing and services are residents' foundation for a better life. Family self-sufficiency. This HUD-funded workforce program for voucher and public housing participants promotes upward mobility and independence by working directly with residents to meet specific challenges and reach personal goals. Workforce development and economic opportunity. We continue to build our workforce program in partnership with residents. The individual services and group programs work hand in hand to create results. Community engagement for redevelopment and modernization. URHA staff works with residents as equal partners in success in neighborhoods. And self-determined community programs. These are designed in partnership with our residents to expand and enhance resident engagement opportunities. I hope Council approves the recommendations to ensure that these units can be permanently dedicated as affordable housing. Thank you for your support, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn Matthews. Next, let's see if there's anybody else in the room here who would like to speak to us. Yes, ma'am. Come on up, identify yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jessica Duran. I am an undergraduate at the University of Virginia, and I'm speaking today to advocate for the city to begin the transition from diesel buses to battery electric buses and cut out the middle step of compressed natural gas buses entirely. There are many challenges associated with electric buses, but these challenges can be overcome and have been by several cities in Virginia already. One concern about running electric buses is grid reliability. If the electrical grid were to go down, the city will have no way of running any buses if they had a 100% electric bus fleet. In my view, this is not an issue that needs to be solved right now because the city is not considering transitioning to a 100% electric fleet right now and likely won't for many decades to come. At this point, the electrical grid will likely be more reliable as electrification increases nationwide and technological advances help improve our grid infrastructure. Another big concern is that electric buses will not be able to complete their full routes because they cannot run for extended periods of time without stopping to recharge. Solutions to this challenge also exist, such as rapid chargers that can charge a bus in 15 to 20 minutes, implementing street-side charging stations, or modifying the current bus model to account for charging times. Compressed natural gas fuel buses lower greenhouse gas emissions by just 12% compared to diesel buses, while electric buses cut emissions by 29 to 87% compared to diesel. According to Charlottesville's Climate Action Plan, transportation accounts for a big chunk, almost 30% of the city's total emissions. Electric buses will allow the city to make measurable inroads on these emissions, while CNG buses will only lower emissions marginally. This benefit of electric buses is worth the challenge. It will be difficult to implement electric buses in the transit system, but it is an investment for the future that I urge the City Council to seriously consider. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Duran. Anybody online next?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we now have Kate Fraley.
All right, Ms. Fraley, you have 3 minutes.
I'm Kate Fraley. I live in Charlottesville. I want to talk with you about the jail project. First of all, if or when the preliminary funding request comes to you in June or probably in July or later, please vote no. I have many reasons to oppose the jail project. Can't go into them all tonight, but in 2019, the cost for fixing the HVAC and the floors was $1.9 million. Now the cost for the renovation and new construction is $73 million, including interest. The amount for Charlottesville is estimated to be about $1 million per year for 27 years. That's a lot of money to commit for a lot of years, and you know it will be more. Here's a quote from the Daily Progress from December 14 to 29, Daily Progress from the Seaville. This is not a quote from Superintendent Coomer, but a quote from the article, Brio. After the renovation, the jail will house its population in the renovated 1974 section, which will have larger cells. The 2000 section will be used when necessary, depending on the jail's staffing. So essentially, to me, the renovation is actually building a new jail, because that's where they're going to put everybody. And if the issue is staffing, then don't you think we should spend money on getting more staff? Maybe K-Tech would help in the development of people for those jobs rather than building a new design of a jail to meet the needs of the staffing level. There will be so many competing priorities in the future, and I hope that you won't make incarceration a priority for tax dollars. So again, please vote no on any funding or advancement of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fraley. So next, is there anyone in person who'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good. Hello, members of the Charlottesville City Council. My name is Josie Drumheller, and I'm an undergraduate first year at the University of Virginia. I'm speaking today to share my opinions on the preservation of the City of Charlottesville's tree canopy. For those who are unaware, this topic is in reference to the areas in Charlottesville that are not only shaded by trees, but are designed to be utilized as well. These spaces provide cover from the heat in the spring and summer, collect stormwater runoff, cool temperatures in the surrounding area through the use of excess water vapor, and so much more. I just want to iterate, alongside attending UVA, I've lived in Albemarle County all my life, and I'm almost 19, so I've been able to experience this a little more personally. The State of the Urban Forest Report of the Charlottesville Tree Commission documented that over the last 5 years, we have lost nearly 990 acres of tree canopy to various construction projects. This amounts to about 35% of our tree covering. While the development of new buildings, especially those involving affordable housing, must continue to progress, an adjustment should be made to raise the required minimum of tree canopy. Currently, the Virginia Tree Ordinance base states that all new development or redevelopment should provide 10 to 20% canopy depending on the site zone. In order for the goal of updating and implementing a robust urban forest management plan, which includes tree preservation, planting, and maintenance mentioned in Charlottesville's Climate Action Plan to be achieved, these numbers must increase. For example, a minimum coverage of a site zoned for businesses should be raised from 10 to maybe 15 or 20%. With numerous new developments constructed daily, this slight adjustment could bring back the nearly 1,000 acres of tree coverage that we have lost over the last 5 years. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Drumheller. So next, somebody online.
Next, we have Abigail Korish. You are on with council.
Hello, members of the Charlottesville City Council. My name is Abigail Korish, and I'm an undergraduate at the University of Virginia. I am here today to comment upon the future of the Charlottesville buses, both those that serve the city and those that serve the school system. I believe that electric buses are the future of public transport. With great innovations currently happening in the field, I believe that in the coming decade, electric buses will be as reliable as diesel-powered ones. However, currently I'm not convinced that the range of electric buses is sufficient for city transit. The goal of a public bus system should be to provide low-cost transportation for all people. Today, providing such transportation with reduced greenhouse gas emissions should also be a goal. According to the city's climate report, while 30% of Charlottesville's greenhouse gas emissions come from transit, only 7% of this comes from mass transit. Thus, in trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, one option is to increase reliance on public transport, as this has a much lesser carbon footprint per year. Yet today, with electric buses, this would be incredibly difficult. A recent study suggests that they have shorter ranges than diesel-powered ones, and that these ranges fluctuate greatly with the seasons. Between 2018 and 2020, the District of Columbia ran a trial with electric buses. They found that they were only able to operate the electric buses for 44 miles compared to the 96-mile average for comparable diesel-powered buses. While compressed natural gas buses are a slightly cleaner alternative to diesel buses, they would require a large investment in the city's infrastructure. If the goal is to switch to a fully electric fleet in the near future, I do not believe that this would be a worthwhile investment. While I am concerned that electric buses may not be ready for city transit prime time, electric buses could thrive within the school system. School buses run shorter routes and sit idle for extended periods of time. Their schedule would allow the buses to charge overnight, run in the mornings, charge during the day, and then run in the afternoons. It would allow the city to gain experience with electric buses without committing to them for mass transit while the technology is still largely in development. I believe that if the city wants to meet its climate goal, it should continue to use diesel-powered buses for city transit, but invest in electric buses within the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Korish. Next, anybody here in person? My goodness, we have a lot of folks. I was going to go here.
Hello, members of the Charlottesville City Council. My name is Marisa Yamamoto, and I'm an undergraduate at the University of Virginia. I'm speaking tonight to comment upon the importance of preserving Charlottesville's tree canopy. As the Charlottesville Climate Action effectively outlines, ensuring tree canopy preservation is vital to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and creating a healthy, sustainable city. On an environmental note, not only do trees absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen that leads to reductions in air pollution, they absorb stormwater runoff, minimizing flood risk, stabilizing soil, and reducing sedimentation in streams. Through the successful planting of trees, areas of shade can be created to minimize energy consumed for cooling in the summer, and harsh winds can be deflected to save energy for heating buildings in the winter, further decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Socially, the increasing tree canopy will deepen the community's knowledge and connection to nature, proving to improve physical and mental health, creating a more walkable and livable community. The intersectional benefits of preserving tree canopy are wide-reaching and cannot be dismissed. That said, it is vital to acknowledge the impacts of preserving the tree canopy on the community, to put equity at the forefront of the conversation. Research has highlighted the disproportionate number of trees with older and less wealthy neighborhoods consisting of less tree canopy in Charlottesville, correlating to higher temperatures, higher health risks, and more health disparities. Though important concerns of gentrification as a repercussion of planting trees have been voiced, this should not deter the preservation of Charlottesville's tree canopy. Rather, efforts to ensure affordable and denser housing, adopting inclusionary zoning, and focusing on subsidizing the potential cost of an increased tree canopy should be considered instead. If planned and carefully executed, preserving our tree canopy will not intensify inequity but will address it. It is my firm belief that the preservation of our tree canopy will lead to a more sustainable, equitable, and livable community. Thank you for your continued service to the Charlottesville community. I appreciate your time and your consideration.
And could I ask for your name again?
Marisa Yamamoto.
Okay, because I know our clerk will want to make sure our minutes reflect. You got it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, somebody online?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have Nick Caperday. You are on with council.
Good evening, members of the Charlottesville City Council. My name is Nick Caperday, and I am an undergraduate at the University of Virginia. I am speaking tonight to comment upon more sustainable alternatives to traditional fossil fuel buses and to skip the middle step of CNG buses. As a rapidly growing city that is dedicated to creating a sustainable future and lowering carbon emissions, I believe that it is time to consider switching to electric buses instead of CNG. According to the Climate Action Plan of 2019, the transportation sector represents 30% of our greenhouse gas profile, so it's a place where we need to make a lot of improvements. Yes, while CNG buses are more environmentally friendly than diesel, electric buses are the more sustainable and cost-effective choice in the long run for many reasons. Firstly, electric buses produce no tailpipe emissions. That's especially important in Charlottesville, where we struggled with air quality issues in the past. Things like smog and stuff like that. Also, electric buses are also better in terms of performance. Electric buses provide smoother accelerations and no noise, which can improve passenger comfort and increase ridership while reducing wear and tear, repairs of vehicles, making them more suitable for a hilly area like ours. There are also more concerns about the range of electric buses, and it's true that electric buses have less range than diesel, but on average, a CNG bus has half the range of a diesel-fueled bus anyways, according to a school bus replacement program done by the California Energy Commission in 2021. Additionally, electric buses are more resilient to price changes in fuel markets, providing a more predictable and stable fuel cost over time. We can start integrating school buses into our system by electrifying school buses. The school buses are most active in the mornings and at the end of the school day, leaving a lot of room for recharge if necessary and to test out the ranges and how we can make that work. I believe that by adopting electric school buses, Charlottesville can demonstrate its commitment to sustainability and promote cleaner transportation solutions. While there may be some concerns about upfront costs and charging infrastructure, I believe that the long-term benefits of electric buses make them the superior choice for the city. Thank you again for your consideration and continued effort to make the city a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. In person, let's go, okay, right here. Had no idea that having people was back in person was going to be such a popular option. It's been 3 long years.
I'm glad. Hello, members of Charlottesville City Council. My name is Leonie, and I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Virginia as well. I'm speaking today to advocate for the creation of a more walkable and bikeable city of Charlottesville. Walkable and bikeable cities allow for greater social interactions within the community, lead to a decrease in fossil fuel emissions, having a positive impact on our environment, and also have a great impact on the city's population's health and well-being. These various reasons make it such a prevalent issue for our community. Charlottesville has consistently been recognized by its residents as a city with unsafe and inconsistent bike lanes and walkability options. This issue impacts an incredibly high percentage of the city, as proven by the 2021 Move to Health Equity Study. The data highlights that the majority of the Charlottesville community usually drives, but that's not their preferred choice of transport. The insufficient bike infrastructure is a serious concern. I understand there's been work on this issue in the past, for example through the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan in 2015, but there is still much more to do. While the most recent comprehensive plan includes an in-depth action plan on important issues, such as against racial disparities, the transportation goals are vaguely described and do not provide clear solutions to these issues. It's clearly stated in the plan that there's a need to improve transit, walkability, and bicycle infrastructure, but how to go about achieving these goals is unclear. I believe the focus should be placed on safer bike and walking paths leading to downtown along Main Street, as well as the area around Ivy Road. These are integral streets in our city, and I think overall, making the downtown area more accessible would have an extremely positive difference on our entire community. Thank you so much for your consideration. As a member of the Charlottesville community, I really appreciate all of your time commitment to the council.
Thank you. Next, somebody online.
Mayor Snook, we have Laura Anderson.
Ms. Anderson, you have 3 minutes.
Mute. Okay, can you hear me?
Just barely. Can you speak up?
Sure.
There we go.
Thank you, Lloyd. Good evening, Mayor Snook and fellow councilors. My name is Laura Anderson, and I've lived in the county for many years. For the past few months, it's been a privilege to support the extraordinary efforts of CASPA Concerns to help our shelter make critical and overdue changes. Right now, I also want to take time to thank the former employees and volunteers who initially came forward with their stories. One of the many deficiencies that became apparent as I've learned more and more about the shelter's abject governance and leadership crises is the board's and directors' failure to appreciate the shelter's volunteers. Having been candidates in volunteer-driven races, you all know the value of volunteer support. You can raise all the money in the world, but without volunteers on the ground, nothing much will happen. I have been a volunteer manager and a volunteer for many organizations and campaigns, and I have never seen this sort of treatment of volunteers before. I was disappointed to learn that during Gunter's tenure, there has been no formal recognition of the volunteer community to promote unity and commitment to the shelter or budget to do so. While Gunter has appreciated her board volunteers with dinners and lunches paid for by the shelter, the hundreds of dog walkers, foster care providers, and others at the shelter have never received this kind of treatment. A healthy nonprofit budgets for volunteer recognition efforts and supports its volunteers. Last month, I was shocked when Louise Finger was fired. You don't fire volunteers with years of experience and commitment. Frankly, you don't fire them at all. Shortly after that, another longtime volunteer was fired via email by a Richmond litigator. If the organization had to replace her with a paid walker, it would cost more than $10,000 per year. It's apparent that neither the board nor Gunter nor their Richmond lawyers have regarded these hundreds of volunteers as the enormous asset they are. Instead, volunteers have been taken for granted and treated as disposable. The board must be restructured to include a volunteer member, and the board must apologize to the fired volunteers and welcome them back. This would be a good first step in helping us have the confidence in this board that we need. So far, CASPA concerns with no leadership structure and no money has been the target of board-approved PR and legal assaults to undermine its work to help the shelter thrive and to be an organization of which Charlottesville can be proud. I hope we can take steps to urge the board to support its volunteers starting now. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Next in person, we're going to go over to this end.
Hello, my name is Mariam Adalanda Diallo, and I'm a student at the University of Virginia studying architecture with a focus in sustainability. I am here to talk about reforming the gas utility program. I believe that the gas utility program is severely outdated and proves to be less beneficial than it claims to be. The city's gas utility reported 90 leaks in 2021. Charlottesville Gas has also stated that its leaks per mile rate is 0.095 across the system's nearly 650 miles of installed lines. Additionally, the utility is installing new gas lines for free, representing a $250,000 giveaway for fossil fuel system expansion. Charlottesville Gas also stated it's looking into more sustainable ways to serve gas into its cities. I find this incredibly hypocritical. The CGEEP, Charlottesville Gas Energy Efficiency Program, has also spent $173,000 to replace inefficient natural gas appliances. Yet the city of Charlottesville is eventually going to spend more money fixing the problems caused by natural gas, money that could have been spent bettering the city by installing sidewalks and bike lanes where there should be sidewalks and bike lanes. A second suggestion I would strongly encourage the city to take into consideration is the modification and incentivization of the energy systems employed in city schools, whether that would involve installing more solar panels or other alternate renewable energy sources to help power schools. Schools in Charlottesville have the highest natural gas usage of... Schools in Charlottesville have the highest natural gas usage of any facility, standing at nearly 8 million kilowatt hours per year. Second place being recreation, which is less than half of that of schools, nearly 300 kilowatt hours per year. The money spent and the money that will be spent on the natural gas and the installation of gas-fired systems could have instead been invested in solar panels built and used to power schools. This would significantly reduce the carbon emissions caused by the natural gas consumption. I urge you all to take into consideration these changes, not only for us, but for the future residents of this beautiful city. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, somebody else online?
Next up, we have Alice Washington.
Ms. Washington, you have 3 minutes. Washington, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I would like.
Hello.
I would like to talk about the housing situation in Charlottesville. We are having about the housing. Okay. We are hoping that you will approve for the housing for Dogwood, housing to the CHRA, and also if you all are going to do something about housing for the homeless. They need, even the small homes would help them. which would take no land hardly whatsoever. And we know some of those people you know either went to school with or through business. And we know some of those people you know either went to school with or through business. So I wish you would consider that for the lower income, 0 to 30 income, to get them some type of housing, a roof over their head. It's getting ready to be hot. There's sunstroke. In the winter, there's a chance of them freezing. You know we don't have enough shelters, but everybody seems to be ignoring the homeless. We don't have enough shelters, but everybody seems to be ignoring the homeless. We don't have enough shelters. And it could be any of us, including some of you councilmen, that can become homeless through circumstances. It could be any of us, including some of you councilmen, that can become homeless through circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Next here, right down here, I'll swing back around.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say. My name is Joseph Inacio. I'm a bit of an outsider, a resident of the state of Florida, but currently reside here at the University of Virginia, studying civil engineering with a focus in transportation. And I'm here to address the city's efforts, or lack thereof, concerning our pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. For, as many of us know, carbon emissions and greenhouse gases are becoming an ever-increasing concern to the Charlottesville and American public. And one of the main solutions in addressing this has been the increase and expansion in accessibility to sidewalks and bike lanes in order to replace car trips in our cities. And the city of Charlottesville, as mentioned by one of the citizens here, does indeed have a plan as of 2015 to install bike lanes and expand sidewalks across the city, which I will commend and thank you for. However, the lack of action on this plan is very much concerning, especially if the city has any sort of intention whatsoever to meet its climate and transportation goals. In the years since this plan was put forth, cities similar to Charlottesville in size, such as Bloomington, Indiana, Norwalk, Connecticut, Spartanburg, South Carolina, among others, have installed several dozen bike lanes and separated bike paths within their cities, many of them college towns, while we have very little to show for it, which is quite frankly a shame. The city of Charlottesville has made many commitments and put forth many statements since 1998 when it committed to the TJPDC Regional Sustainability Accords. But words do not mean much if they are not followed forth by actions. My only request to the city, which I feel is a request of many concerned citizens, is to put forth a plan for action and execution and budgeting and putting forth requests for proposals to execute these plans that the City Council has come up with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have now reached our 16 folks that we have on Community Matters for this first stage. There is a second Community Matters section towards the end of the meeting. Let me just ask, how many other people had been hoping to be able to say something? 1, 2, 3. I'll just go ahead and do them.
He wants to just let him do it.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Setting precedent might be hard to back up.
Okay, if you're, that's fine. I'm just curious. So many folks are young UVA students. Is there a UVA class or something that is saying, "Come speak as City Council"? I figured. Okay. Well, so
we hear you.
Okay. there will be a chance again in another hour or so. You can also go home and do it by Zoom if you want to, if you'd rather not sit here. Not that I don't love having everybody here, but we've got to move on. Okay, next item on our agenda is a resolution to appoint an executive director to the Police Civilian Oversight Board, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Mendez, to present. Mr. Mendez is here, Mr. Rogers is not. Do we know what we're doing?
Mayor, I will stand in for the city manager.
Thank you.
So again, good evening, members of City Council as well as the public. As you all know, the city has been searching for our next Police Civilian Oversight Board Executive Director after the resignation of our first director, Mr. Hansel Aguilar, in the fall of 2022. The Police Civilian Oversight Board, as created through the hard work of members of our community in 2019, has the power to develop and administer a process for receiving complaints about the Charlottesville Police Department, to review the police department's internal affairs investigations at the request of a civilian complainant. Among other tasks, the board may conduct hearings and make findings concerning CPD's internal affairs investigations initiated by civilians. As noted in your agenda packet, the city manager's office initiated a process to fill the open position of the executive director and received 20 applications. Out of the 20, which were reviewed by the city manager, his office, as well as Chair Mendez, 7 were interviewed virtually, and then 3 were selected to come in person to participate in a 3-panel, very marathon of a day of interviews. Mm-hmm. Within those panels, Chair Mendez as well as board member James Watson participated, fulfilling the requirements of the ordinance. After those interviews, the ordinance also allows those participating PCOB members to provide their recommendation of a hire to the city manager. They did so, and the city manager accepted their recommendation without question, and an offer was extended to Ms. Inez Gonzalez. Tonight, the city manager requests that the city council approve of the hiring of Ms. Gonzalez, who has over 28 years of experience in law enforcement, including over 25 years of experience at the Newark, New Jersey Police Department. Her tenure at the police department included her being the first Hispanic female to be appointed to the rank of lieutenant, as well as the rank of captain in the history of the Newark Police Force. She also served in several areas, including internal affairs, rising to the rank of commander in the Office of Internal Affairs prior to her departure from the force. Ms. Gonzalez is passionate about police accountability and policies that ensure that accountability. The PCOB chair and member, Mr. Watson, selected her as their nominee, and we concur. Mr. Mendez is here tonight should you have any questions for him. And again, I also am happy to reply to any questions. However, the city manager, along with myself, Chair Mendez, and Mr. Watson, believe that Ms. Gonzalez will help to continue to move the PCOB forward in their work for our community. You all also have a resolution in your packet that was provided to the public as well.
Do we know when she would be expected to arrive? Were we to approve?
May 1st, sir.
Questions, anybody?
It was touched on a little bit, but just from Mr. Mendez, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about kind of just the involvement the PCOB had in this process and some of the qualities that make you believe this is she's the right choice for advancing police accountability.
Well, we looked at 20 candidates and whittled those down eventually into by 2 successive screens into 3 finalists, all of which who were highly qualified. But I think the qualifications that Ms. Marshall just stated, kind of spoke for themselves. Also, her life experience was very compelling as well. She also was once in charge of a woman's prison, and she told stories of trying to humanize the experience for them. And then at one point when she was undercover, some very bad people tried to drag her into a car, and two women who she had met in prison and who she had helped dragged her out and saved her life, basically. But that was just one thing. Both Mr. Watson and I, and both of the two interview panels, were highly impressed with her, and I think she'll make a great executive director.
Thank you. Other questions, Council? I don't have any questions. Is there? So I guess we just need a motion and a second.
2 seconds.
The motion is. The resolution is on page 85 of the packet.
I move the approval. Approving the city manager hiring recommendation for the Police Civilian Oversight Board Executive Director. I move for confirmation of the recommendation that the city manager has made for Ms. Inez Gonzalez.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Not. Ms. Thomas, take the vote, please.
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Councilor Puryear?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. We will look forward to her arrival in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, then we had an item on the agenda. Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission mitigation plan has been moved to a future agenda. I believe we're talking about May 15th, I think, for that one. Then the next item, the resolution to award Charlottesville Affordable Housing Funds. Office of Community Solutions is represented in the back row there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Deputy City Managers, and the City Manager. Tonight, we are presenting to you 2022 and 2023 CAF funding allocation. There has been process changes since the Office of Community Solutions was created, and the Affordable Housing Plan was enacted by the City Council in 2021. Some of those changes includes creation of CAF, separate CAF advisory committee, the HAC committee separate from funding allocation. We now have a timeline for phased issuing of NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability. Essentially, it spreads out how the various phases of the funding application process is going to be staged and timeline for such development. We also instituted a housing development project investment. This is not funding, essentially provides some kind of roadmap for the next 5 years on various projects anticipated by the nonprofit organizations or private developers that may be seeking funding from the city of Charlottesville. We also consolidated the HOP, the various housing programs funded by the city of Charlottesville, most of which from Department of Human Services. We moved them over to Office of Community Solutions, and then calls it HOPS, which is Housing Operations and Program Support Program. We also have the CAF, which is the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Funds. For the current funding recommendations for $835,000, that is from previous allocation. So once the City Council approves that, this is the first reading. The second reading will structure the agreement, and then the funding will be released to the awardees. We also have the Community Development Block Grant and the Home Funds in the amount of $410,000 and also $98,000 for the Home Funds. These are the phases of the new programs that we have. Like I indicated earlier, this is this funding recommendation is for FY 2022 to 2023. Staff received 6 applications from potential applicants totaling $1.720 million. Of these, 5 were recommended for funding. The only agency that submitted an application that wasn't funded was AHIP. The committee felt that AHIP did not submit a quality application and did not score high enough to warrant funding allocation. The following agencies were recommended for funding. CRHA under Tier 1 recommended for $187,500. The Community Housing Services for rehabilitation and preservation of affordable housing recommended for $67,806. Habitat for Humanity received more funding than any other agency for transition to home ownership, $225,000. Virginia Supportive Housing, Tier 1, Habitat is also Tier 1, and Community Services Housing is also Tier 1. I'm going to provide a definition of what we mean by Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Virginia Supportive Housing, for their $6 million project on Highway 29, Premier Circle, they'll be receiving $186,722, mostly for construction. And PHA, Tier 3, the only agency that is receiving funding for Tier 3, for anti-displacement, prospect home ownership opportunity. They will be receiving $167,972. Now, to explain or define Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, if some of you recall, the Affordable Housing Plan recommended that at least half of the funding go to Tier 1 projects. Tier 1 projects are projects designed to serve people at 30% AMI and below. And Tier 2, 30% of the funding was recommended to go to Tier 2 projects, serving people at 60% AMI or below. And then Tier 3, 20% is recommended to go to those projects, serving people at 80% AMI or below. So this is how the funding were allocated, and approximately 58% of the funding allocated went to Tier 1 projects, and 22% went to Tier 2, and then 20% went to Tier 3 projects. So this is a demonstration that staff, it's following on recommendations provided in the Affordable Housing Plan. Staff is recommending that the City Council approve the recommendations unless Council has an alternative recommendation we can make. But at this point, staff is recommending approval. You can take your questions.
Thank you. Questions, anyone?
I don't have an alternative, so.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think it's good to see the majority of funding going to 30% AMI or below. And I'm glad to see that, this is additional investments going directly to homelessness, home ownership, and home rehab. So I'm comfortable with where the recommendations are at.
I was just thinking, I don't remember seeing in past years an analysis of which, the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 stuff. That we had some couple of years ago and passed an affordable housing plan that called for a commitment to 50% of it was supposed to go to under 30% of AMI, and it was one of those things that just sort of whooshed on past and we never paid much attention to. This is the first time I could remember getting the kind of information necessary for us to be able to say that we're actually doing that.
Yeah, we actually did it last year because the Deputy City Manager, Mr. Sanders, asked that we move forward in terms of implementing what is in there. But this year, we wanted to highlight it more clearly so that Council, will understand that staff is already following up on the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 concept as recommended in the Affordable Housing Plan.
Great. Thank you. So So this is one of two readings. Do we have an agreement to move it to the May 1st meeting for the second reading?
Yeah, I just had another question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Sure.
You probably explained this to me, and I should know it, but is hops part of this, or hops is separate?
No, hops is separate.
Okay.
Hops, this was approved last year. It's for last fiscal year. But because of internal reorganizations, and the new scheduling for issuing the NOFA, so it was delayed, and the NOFA was issued, I believe, at the end of December or in January. So once this money is approved by the City Council, we structure the agreement, and then it's ready to be released. The HOPS is part of this current budget that the City Council approved, I believe, last week or last week.
Okay. Okay. So are we surprised that AHIP did not pass muster?
Just to let you know, although AHIP didn't pass the muster, there are several reasons related to the CAF committee recommending not approving the application for funding, not just the quality of the application, but the $100,000 that was allocated to them last year. We are about 3 months or 2.5 months left to complete the use of that money. At this point, the money is still sitting in the city's account. We received 3 invoices last week, which totals about probably $49,000. Staff is currently reviewing that. So if we pay those invoices, they will still have $50,000 left. And today they requested for extension for 1 year, extension of the funding agreement, so they will be able to use those funds, and also so they will be able to find households at 60% AMI. So at this time we are not sure whether they will be able to find those who will be able to take advantage of the program that are making or have household income of 60% AMI and willing to sign the deed of trust. So that was the email we received from them today.
So that's why they didn't spend their money.
I think that might be part of the problem they have. And secondly, I don't think they have people on the waiting list that they are supposed to have. So I'm not sure how long it will take them to go out and solicit or publish funding availability, so they will be able to recruit folks that will take advantage of the situation. I just want to provide the information to City Council.
So what do you think that means going forward? You say they've spent $49,000, so basically $50,000. What will that $50,000 do for them over the next fiscal year? If they don't find anybody, it will continue to sit there? Or do you feel that they could find somebody and they might run out of money?
We don't know whether they will find, at this point, we don't know whether they will find somebody or not. We have to discuss, what we're looking at is staff is going to discuss the email requesting for extension, and we need some more information from them. How long they are requesting for 1 year. We are not sure whether we are going to grant them the 1 year until we get some additional information from them.
Okay. And we amended our budget before we passed it to over, I think, $200,000 for AHIP.
220.
Yeah.
225.
So, I mean, separate from the CAF, I mean, they're going to get a similar amount of funding through that avenue. But so I don't know. I feel comfortable in terms of like the amount of funding where they're at, but that's just my perspective.
And so
because we get them the 250, you think they're okay with that additional 50, 70?
That's my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
So for the benefit of the City Council, the CDBG Task Force is also recommending that AHIP gets $64,000 as well because they apply for CDBG funding.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So are we good passing this on second reading to the next meeting?
Yes.
Consent agenda or not?
I'm good with that.
Consent agenda?
Sure.
Yes.
Consent
that's
agenda.
fine.
Okay. Thank you. Next is a resolution concerning our coronavirus pandemic responses. And it says Mr. Rogers, but is somebody else? Mr. Sanders?
I'll be taking that item for you.
Okay.
So, Mayor and Councilors, this item is presented at your request to rescind city procedures for restricting meeting attendance and the use of city facilities in response to the coronavirus pandemic. As the Biden administration has announced a rollback of its COVID protocols effective May 11th, I ask for your consideration of the following. The city manager has directed staff to review all procedures to ensure we have considered every measure that supports the return to normal operations for meetings regarding the city's business. Effective May 1st, 2023, the following would go into effect. The Clerk of Council will discontinue seat reservation procedures, making the council chambers accessible to anyone. Also, maintaining advanced speaker registration online as an option for participating in council meetings, and resuming in-person speaker reservations during any meeting of council. Announcements to the public would include that no food or drink is permitted in the council chambers. The Sergeant-at-Arms will be in their assigned place during all meetings of council. The city manager and clerk of council will return to seats on the dais, which is already started in our trial run today. The deputy city managers and the city attorney will participate in meetings from the gallery, and we will continue to maintain a first-come, first-served media section in the rear of the council chambers. The city manager has asked the communications department to maintain a hybrid posture for the following meetings: City Council, Planning Commission, Board of Architectural Review, Police Civilian Oversight Board, Human Rights Commission, Planning Commission and Council joint work sessions, and budget work sessions. All other boards, commissions, task forces, and committees should return to in-person meetings, and staff liaisons will work to support scheduling available spaces for those meetings to be held. And you have a resolution in your packet to support this item moving forward, making it effective May 1st.
Questions, comments, council?
Yeah, I mean, I think that tonight was kind of skewed because of the UVA, class.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the attendance just on the regular. I think that, when we were restricted to, 23 slots, a lot of times all 23 seats weren't filled. So I'm glad now that we're fully open. So.
Any clarifying questions or comments? Not motion.
You may have already addressed it, and I just missed it. But Zoom participation will still be possible for the public.
Yes, hybrid will be maintained.
Okay, and that's expected to be kind of in perpetuity for those critical boards and commissions?
That is the posture at this time. Provided staff can support it, our goal would be to make sure that we can continue to do that since it is a high-demand opportunity.
Definitely. Well, that's obviously really great to hear. I don't have any other questions.
I note that the resolution has a paragraph that says the city manager is directed to authorize to develop a list of city public meetings allowed to offer hybrid citizen participation.
So in terms of community matters, will it be the same as it was tonight, Mayor, in terms of number of people that can speak and present? Or
I would think so.
Okay. Should be no changes in terms
We'll still have pre-registration if they
some can do virtual and some can do.
Right.
Okay.
We'll just go down the list of the pre-registered, and then after that we alternate. Okay. So is there a motion?
Yes. I move the resolution to rescind the city's procedures for restricting meeting attendance and the use of city facilities in response to the coronavirus pandemic.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
The only discussion, I guess, is how we'll get the word out to boards and commissions. I don't know if they're already fully aware, but I'm just anticipating some of them will be have a rough adjustment to moving from virtual to an in-person quorum, which I think is inevitable, but I don't know if there's anything we can do in terms of outreach to try to mitigate that. But
So as this is a one reading item, the intention would be to notify the leaders of those various bodies as well as staff liaisons so that they can begin making appropriate arrangements beginning May 1st. So they could start immediately after your action tonight.
Yeah, I guess I think it'll just be what it is. I don't think there's anything to really do about it.
They were supposed to be having quorums in person anyway.
How many have they actually been doing?
I don't know who hasn't been meeting the requirements. I don't know of any.
If they haven't been, they're not telling you.
I can't keep up with all of them.
And we do have a contact list for all of them, so we can issue that statement from the city manager directing everyone to return in person.
Okay. Ms. Thomas?
Okay. Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Councilor Puryear?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, last item, regular item on the agenda is the resolution to appropriate $5 million to Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority for acquisition of Dogwood properties. Mr. Sanders?
Yes, sir. So this is a reminder that this is a $10 million acquisition of 74 units referred to as the Dogwood portfolio, which is a naturally occurring affordable housing set of properties here in the city. And the city is being asked to provide $5 million capital investment in exchange for half interest in the portfolio. There will be a mortgage on the property because CRHA is using a $5 million loan from a private party to make it possible for them to acquire this portfolio. It is interest-free, and they will be required to repay that. The arrangement that they've established thus far would provide that monthly payments would commence after a 3-month grace period so that CRHA could build a reserve account to be able to respond to any maintenance issues that were to arise in this interim of the transition. CRHA will execute an agreement with the city that requires the following: an annual report to council by January 31st of each calendar year, providing details on the ongoing ownership of the portfolio, since it would be a joint ownership situation. Include with the Dogwood portfolio an update on the Montrose and Coleman properties, which were acquired in the fall, with that same half-interest arrangement to the city. Ensure that the Dogwood portfolio will be included in evaluation in the sustainability plan that you just recently heard about that will ultimately be completed this summer. And cause the separation of this portfolio's financial operations from other CRHA assets. CRHA already has partitioned in their accounting system those 2 properties that they acquired in the fall, and they've been labeled city housing. The Dogwood portfolio would be added to that, and they will continue to maintain that as asset-based management, which is their current practice. And that information would then make it possible for them to come before you and make a presentation on only that portfolio's performance. CRHA has also been will also be provided a 10% monthly management fee of rents collected, which is to cover leasing, financing, finance services, auditing, and administration charges, which is normal practice within a development project. And they will also charge the portfolio for monthly water, sewer, and trash services versus having those applied to each individual unit. The city will retain the first right of refusal on the half interest held by CRHA, therefore meaning that any changes to the ownership of the portfolio will have to come back to council. As a holder of the half interest, any material physical changes to the properties will be required to come before you as well, and material being beyond general maintenance. The references to consideration of split proceeds, while we understand that that is important for council because that's protection of your investment, at this moment the staff recommendation is to allow this to move forward with the consideration that there is debt on the property that needs to be retired first, and upon that retirement, then council will have a future decision to make as to what to do with any proceeds that would arise from the portfolio. So the resolution before you is to appropriate $5 million as a bondable activity, authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with CRHA to acquire the portfolio, and within that acquisition, the city retains half interest in the property and first right of refusal on any future sale.
Okay, so this is actually a second reading. To the extent that there are additional things that got added between the first reading and this reading, does that require any procedural falderall, or can we simply accept it as suggesting an amendment to the original proposal and go ahead and approve it?
So, Mr. McRoberts, I would ask, is there any material changes that you feel would be eliminated in this moment or not? it was more of clarification, I think. So that's altering what
That
we're
was
trying
my
to
sense
accomplish.
as well.
Yes.
And I'm glad to have that additional clarification. And some of those were things that I was fussing about, and I appreciate your having incorporated those into. I gather there'll be some sort of memorandum of understanding or some
Actual development acquisition agreement we'll put together, and that will then be signed by the city manager.
Great.
Someone raised the point in an email about the loan. I guess there's $850,000 loan that exists.
Yeah, there is an $850,000 loan against Woodard Properties at this time within the portfolio. They have asked the city to transition that to CRHA and make a determination on that at some point in the future. It's considered a separate action because that was done directly with them, so that'll be something we'll have to bring back to you later.
Okay, but that's connected to the Dogwood.
It's tied to the properties, and it's actually just been forwarded every 5 years as an extension of the initial agreement. There's been no payment. There was no required payment on the matter.
So basically, for us,
This is free loan.
decision point over time will be whether CRHA pays it back at some point or whether we forgive
Or
the loan.
cancel it, correct.
Okay, but we don't have to face that tonight.
Sure. I mean, I think at this moment, because it is attached to the portfolio, then we probably would be able to carry that forward. At this time, that's what we should do until we bring it back to you for further consideration.
Okay. I agree with that.
Okay.
All right, so this is second reading. If there's any other discussion, are we good? So we're going to make a motion?
I would move to approve the resolution to appropriate $5 million to Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority for acquisition of Dogwood properties.
Second.
Discussion, additional discussion. Ms. Thomas, you want to take the vote?
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Councilor Puryear?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Good.
Mr. Mayor, I just would like to point out and thank Mr. Sanders and Mr. John Sales and others on the board here for, I think, just some creativity and willingness to make this work. And I think this is a great carrying on Mr. Eugene Williams' legacy and ensuring that for the future. I'm happy to proud to be a part of that.
And I'll second that, and like every vote, it's kind of anticlimactic, but I mean, I think this really is a historic action for the city in terms of the amount of properties. It's been many years, decades since we've engaged in acquisition like this. This has grown CRHA's housing portfolio by about 20%, and this will help people directly at 0 to 30% AMI, and would just thank staff and Councilor Pinkston, other councilors, as well as John Sales, for the really hard work that this has been for months. I know, like all votes, it's anticlimactic, but this is something that is really going to make a real life-changing difference for many families, and that's easy to overlook in an ordinance, but I'm just really happy to see this happen.
Yeah, one of the coolest things about it is the fact that they can use this portfolio to help them grow their acquisition of other properties. So it's a win-win-win.
And it's not really anticlimactic. It's very, very important. And so for those people that are beneficiaries, they're very, very excited. And I guess, I don't know, knowing Mr. Williams personally and knowing his life's work and what he means to this community and what this community means to him and all that he's done, for us to carry on that legacy for people that are not as fortunate as others to have decent housing, I know is near and dear to his heart. Yeah. And I'm happy to have been a part of that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we did take the vote, right?
We did.
Yes, we did.
Okay, yeah.
We did.
Okay, and one of the senior moments. Okay, next item on the agenda is the written report from the Rivanna Authority's quarterly report. Any questions about it? It's simply the written report to be read and digested separately. Hearing no questions, we'll now come to the final speaking opportunity for members of the public. Community Matters speakers will be given up 3 minutes, If you're on the Zoom webinar, raise hand. If you're on the phone, *9. And there's nobody else here in chambers, so all the action, if any, is going to be online. Do we have anybody online?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have one. We now have a couple of raised hands.
Okay.
First is Dee Dee Smith.
Ms. Smith, you got 3 minutes.
Thanks. I won't need 3 minutes. I was just kind of catching up with the RWSA report, and I think it's really important to keep an eye on the increasing rates because, and maybe Mr. Pinkston can speak to this, but it is projected in the next 5 years that the RWSA water rates, will go up by 50%. It's an unprecedented rise due to their capital improvement program. So please keep an eye on that. I know it'll come before you in May, but it's really going to be devastating for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else online?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have Brandon Collins.
Mr. Collins, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Brandon Collins. I'm a lifelong resident of Charlottesville, and I'm speaking tonight as just a community member, but also as an employee of CRHA. And don't often do it, but I'm here to tell you all good job. Really awesome night for CRHA, and I'm going a really long ways working with the city and the Housing Authority to truly change the situation in our housing affordability crisis. One thing I know Councilor Payne is aware of, but want to make the council aware of, the CAF money that you allocated to us is going for a really cool thing we call the parallel track. And this is for our homes that are not going to see full-scale redevelopment anytime in the near future. What's cool is our regular redevelopment is basically covered through other funding sources, which allows us to focus more of our regular capital funds from HUD and help from AHG and now the City of Charlottesville to get amazing renovations done. And if you swing by Madison Avenue, Riverside, or Mickey Drive, you'll see roofs going on, siding going up. We'll be getting our new windows in real soon, and it's perfect timing with the help from y'all for the HVAC to get central air into those buildings. This is a game changer for the residents in those 57 homes. They are really going to feel the difference, and we really wouldn't be able to do it this early, or if at all, without your support. So we really, really appreciate that, and we'll keep you up to date. It's like we say, something for everyone. I also just want to acknowledge how amazing it is for me to have watched this housing authority turn into an extremely competent organization due to its leadership, but also for its leadership's recognition of resident leadership. And I know we're going to extend that to the residents of the Dogwood properties. This is really a great partnership with the city to make sure that we're preserving naturally occurring affordable housing. If those properties had gone onto the market, rents would skyrocket, and it would contribute to skyrocketing rents across the city. So, we put a mild stop to some of this, and we hope we can do more, and we really do appreciate the partnership, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Who's next?
Next up, we have Joy Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, you're on for 3 minutes.
Good evening, councilors. I just want to say I want to ditto to what Brandon Collins have said. I was going to speak on something else tonight, but I decided to just put that in the parking lot for another time. I just want to say thank you to all you councilors who have voted for this. Again, I have always been advocating for people from 0 to 30%, because 60% and 80% of the AMI, there's a lot being built up for them. I also want to shine a light on the Housing Authority a little bit. I know that we have been in a dark place for a long, long time. We haven't celebrated coming off the trouble status. And since Mr. Sales have been with the Housing Authority, we have done a lot of things. Redevelopment was at a stalemate for a minute because of some decisions we made because of not knowing anything about construction and redevelopment. He was able to come on board and shine a light on it. Trouble status, he was able to come on board and shine a light on it. Acquiring units, other units, as the Housing Authority used to do years ago. He has moved that to a different level. And I think folks in the community, and maybe some people, not you, Sam, not you, Ashley, but some people in the city may still be looking at the Housing Authority in the dark corner that they were in. I think it's about time people start respecting and recognizing what Mr. Sale has done since he have been helping the house, has been on this side of the with the Housing Authority. Are we doing everything perfect? No, but we're not where we were 5 years ago. Thank you, Juan, for coming in the community and helping out to do the curb appeal. I enjoyed meeting your the guys that evening, that day there. But I would encourage the rest of you. Thank you, Michael. And but I would encourage the rest of council and people in the city to start taking some tours on Crescent Halls and even South First Street, and even coming by West Haven to see what the West Haven residents are doing on Thursdays, every Thursday. Again, I just want to say thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Who's next?
Mayor Snook, we have John Sales has just raised his hand.
Mr. Sales?
Good evening, City Council. I wanted to get on tonight after everyone else spoke on the Housing Authority and how well we're doing. And I also wanted to thank all the city councilors. Councilor Pinkston, you've spent a lot of time with me. Tonight I'll go over Housing Authority operations, but also I feel like we brought back the Dogwood properties. We had worked on that for about, I want to say 6 to 7 months on that acquisition, and I felt in January that it wasn't going anywhere, and I almost gave up on it, and you brought it back to life, so I appreciate that. Councilor Wade, you and I have had many conversations about the Housing Authority, Dogwood properties, and just where we see the Housing Authority in the future. And I see it as being a very, very, very strong housing authority, just like some of the other cities who are tackling the affordable housing crisis are utilizing the Housing Authority, because we do have many resources that we can bring to the table to help families from 0 to 30% AMI while still ensuring that the agency is feasible and sustainable. I also want to thank Ms. Puryear. You and I spent some time on the phone. I look forward to meeting you in person and talking more about the Housing Authority and ensuring that Mr. Eugene Williams' vision is still in the forefront, and that we are adding more units to continue his name and legacy, because he really did something 30, 40 years ago that not a lot of people were focusing on. Mr. Eugene Williams bought properties that were at risk. They were some slum properties that he acquired. He brought in some bond funding and some vouchers to ensure that the rents were sustainable, he could maintain the properties, and he was providing some resources to the tenants that were living in those units. Also want to thank Councilor Payne. You serve on our board. You have made sure our mission is continued and is talked about, and you're moving the Housing Authority forward. Also want to thank Mayor Snook. You and I have met many hours to talk about the Housing Authority and its vision for the future and its vision with the Dogwood properties. And I appreciate you all moving forward with this resolution. It's going to move the Housing Authority so many steps forward while ensuring that the families from 0 to 30% AMI are not forgotten. So I appreciate you all for considering the Dogwood properties for acquisition and also for the CAF allocation, because like Brandon Collins did state, without that funding, we could not complete that project this year. It was something that we were going to have to push off at least another year, because not only do we have to upgrade the HVAC systems to get AC, but we also have to do an electrical upgrade. And so I appreciate that commitment from the City Council, and all of the residents that reside in those communities also appreciate that commitment. Thank you all. You have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Sales. Anyone else online?
Mayor Snook, there are no additional hands.
All right. Well, folks, we've done some good stuff tonight.
I think we did.
All in favor of adjournment, please stand up.
Oh, do we have to stand
We're
up?
adjourned.
Oh, we have to stand up. Me and Juan stood up, so everybody else has to stay.